We kind of get things started off with the third step prayer. I'm going to go ahead and do that with us. It's on page 63, if you want to follow along in your big book. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. Okay, and we got ourselves started. We're on page 97. I'll put that in the here, page 97. Whoops, missed the 7. There we go. We're going to start off at the top there. So near the first paragraph, which is never avoid these responsibilities. Bill, if you'll go ahead and take it away.
Okay. Hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey. And we're on the top, like Leo said, the top of page 97. Never avoid these responsibilities, but be sure you are doing the right thing if you assume them. Helping others is the foundation stone of your recovery. A kindly act once in a while isn't enough. You have to act the Good Samaritan every day if need be. It may mean the loss of many nights' sleep, great interference with your pleasures, interruptions to your business. It may mean sharing your money in your home, counseling frantic wives and relatives, innumerable trips to police courts, sanitariums, hospitals, jails, and asylums. Your telephone may jangle at any time of the day or night. Your wife may sometimes say she is neglected. A drunk may smash the furniture in your home or burn a mattress. You may have to fight with him if he is violent. Sometimes you will have to call a doctor and administer sedatives under his direction. Another time, you may have to send for the police or an ambulance. Occasionally, you will have to meet such conditions.
Yeah, we talked about this last week, and we found that really this was in the beginning. There wasn't the rehab centers that we have now, the detox facilities that are available for folks to go to. And, you know, while some of this may be true on a lighter version of it, you know, somebody may call you in the middle of the night. You may have to, you know, change your plans on a particular day if you need to work with somebody that's struggling or having a hard time. And, you know, somebody may call you while you're working and need some time with you. Sometimes you may want to help them out with a little bit of money just to get them through a really hard patch or spot as far as that's concerned. So, yes, there are times that you will have to sacrifice your needs at that point in time for someone else. And really what the important point here is at the very beginning of this paragraph, we were talking about helping others is the foundation stone of your recovery. And that is an absolute. There has been, it is, I would almost ask to a person, if you raised your hand, that how much better your sobriety and recovery is when you are actually in the midst of helping another person, working with another person, or assisting them. And it really is the word I would use is accountable. You're just accountable to another person, and that tends to really strengthen your resolve to your own recovery. So this Good Samaritan idea of you have to act every day if need be. I kind of want to say that you really kind of have to just act and be in that mode or frame of mind on a constant basis. I think with regard to changing behavior and this kind of the next step, if you will, after getting sober and really getting on that road of recovery is the emotional sobriety. I've struggled with that myself in regards to the fact that Initially, I wanted everybody to forgive me right off the bat after 2 weeks of sobriety, and everything was supposed to be good and fine. It took me a while to realize that just wasn't realistic in any stretch of the imagination. But beyond that, I also expected things to get, markedly better in all areas. I thought, well, I've stopped drinking, so everybody should be, better. I should be better. Things should be better. Well, the fact is we all suffer from, life, and things are going to be what they are, regardless of whether you're drinking or not. Obviously, the drinking made a lot of things worse, but at the same time, they are there, and they're always going to be there. So that was another thing for myself in regards to the maturing of my recovery, is figuring out that emotional sobriety. And I'm still to this day, working on that. And I look at that kind of as well as my step 9, if you will, kind of, you're always making amends. You're working on that. It's a journey. There's almost never going to be a point where you're at your end with regard to that, because obviously you're working on those things if you're in the moment, and obviously trying to make amends for something that you've done wrong. Bill?
Yeah, like Leos mentioned, helping others is the foundation stone of your recovery. That's what helps us stay sober. And it doesn't matter if you go through all of these things that are listed here, or if you just drive somebody to a rehab, because today we have rehabs that deal with most of the beginning portion of somebody getting sober. So as long as you're helping somebody, you're doing what this program says, and that's going to be the foundation stone of your recovery. That's what helps you not drink, is by trying to help somebody else. All right, the next paragraph on page 97. We seldom allow an alcoholic to live in our homes for long at a time. It is not good for him, and sometimes creates serious complications in the family. Though an alcoholic does not respond, there is no reason why you should neglect his family. You should continue to be friendly to them. The family should be offered your way of life. Should they accept and practice spiritual principles, there is a much better chance that the head of the family will recover. And even though he continues to drink, the family will find life more bearable.
So there's a couple of things from back in the 1930s. We've obviously made an assumption here that we're talking about a male, and I would say that that's mostly true, but not always. And obviously, if we look at ourselves in this room today, we'll find that both male and female are afflicted. Number one. Number two is that we talk about the head of the family. In some traditional corners, I guess, there is still, quote, the head of the family. I kind of tend to look at my wife as a partner and an equal, and so neither one of us necessarily is the head of the family. We have our own responsibilities, and we share a lot of things, but nonetheless, that's a bit different. But the idea here is that the family themselves have an opportunity to embrace the spiritual life and the principles that we're setting forth for the recovering alcoholic to follow. The message here is that if the family chooses to participate and proactively accept these principles, the chances of recovery are greatly increased, because obviously there's immediate support for the alcoholic in a way that in some cases isn't going to be there. So they're not alone. Bill?
Yeah, Bill and Bob realized that the family was sick too, and the family needed help. And this is before Al-Anon was ever established. Al-Anon didn't start until 1951, approximately 13 years after this book was written. So, but they knew right from the beginning that the family needed help also. And if the family got help, they realized that the alcoholic had a better chance of staying sober. Because if they went home and they kept fighting with their family because the family was still sick, they'll probably drink over that. All right, the last line on page 97. For the type of alcoholic who is able and willing to get well, little charity in the ordinary sense of the word is needed or wanted. The men who cry for money and shelter before conquering alcohol are on the wrong track. Yet we do go to great extremes to provide each other with these very things when such action is warranted. This may seem inconsistent, but we think it is not.
So it's a case-by-case situation. Obviously, following a spiritual lifestyle, embracing the principles and working through the steps puts you in a position to be able to provide for yourself and for your family or others, depending on who and what your situation is. And that is really the goal. And I'm reminded of the, give a fish to a person and they eat for a day, teach them to fish and they eat for a lifetime. So basically what we're trying to do is teach lifetime skills, and then that is applicable to their ability to go out and provide for themselves and for others, as opposed to carrying them along and financially propping them up for even a short-term period of time. Is sometimes not what you want to do, but it is a case-by-case basis, and in some instances, like it says in the book, it's warranted. Bill?
Yeah, like it says in here, the men who cry for money and shelter are on the wrong track. In other words, we have to be careful when we're helping somebody. We have to make sure we're not enabling them. There's a thin line between enabling and helping someone. All right, the first new paragraph on page 98. It is not the matter of giving that is in question, but when and how to give. That often makes the difference when it between failure and success. The minute we put our work on a service plane, the alcoholic commences to rely upon our assistance rather than upon God. He clamors for this or that, claiming he cannot master alcohol until his material needs are cared for. Nonsense. Some of us have taken very hard knocks to learn this truth. Job or no job, wife or no wife, we simply do not stop drinking so long as we place dependence upon other people ahead of dependence on God.
Yep, and this is just a paragraph that reinforces what we were just talking about. And the idea here is to embracing these spiritual principles in your higher power, and the fact is you can master alcohol and stop drinking without having all of your other material needs met. And that is really the crux of this, and the idea is to really focus on that, as opposed to I need to pay off all of my debts, or I need to pay this and that, I need to get this and that so I can do that kind of thing. First and foremost, get yourself straight with your higher power, and embrace the principles and the steps, and then you're on your way. I've underlined the word nonsense in here. It is, in fact, just an emphasis, and I think it's a good one. Bill?
Yeah, the last sentence in this paragraph, or part of the last sentence, it says, we simply do not stop drinking so long as we place dependence upon other people ahead of dependence on God. That's a reference to first things first. The first thing we're supposed to do is depend on God. If we depend on other people first, it's probably not going to work. Okay, the next paragraph is a short paragraph, but burn the idea into the consciousness of every man that he can get well regardless of anyone. The only condition is that he trusts God and clean house.
Absolutely. So there's just an emphatic kind of statement here, and a reference to what, again, we've been talking about. But the only condition is that he trusts God and clean house. And that is absolutely one of the tenets that we live by. And it is a foundation by which we build everything else upon. Bill?
Okay, the last paragraph on page 98. Now the domestic problem. There may be divorce, separation, or just strained relations. When your prospect has made such reparations as he can to his family and has thoroughly explained to them the new principles by which he is living, he should proceed to put those principles into action at home. That is, if he is lucky enough to have a home. Though his family be at fault in many respects, he should not be concerned about that. He should concentrate on his own spiritual demonstration. Argument and fault finding are to be avoided like the plague. In many homes, this is a difficult thing to do, but it must be done if any results are to be expected. If persisted in for a few months, the effect on a man's family is sure to be great. The most incompatible people discover that they have a basis upon which they can meet. Little by little, the family may see their own defects and admit them. These can then be discussed in an atmosphere of helpfulness and friendliness.
Yep. I think one of the things that's kind of lost in this paragraph, but it's one that I've highlighted, it says, if persisted in for a few months, the effect on a man's family is sure to be great. A few months. All right. So again, back to my reference of my wanting people to be normal and better and forgiving after only 2 weeks of sobriety was completely unrealistic. And years of problems, challenges, and issues that I created alongside others. And again, this is a reference to that as well. It says that though his family be at fault in many respects. All right. So we're all admitting that people do have faults, that they do contribute to some of the problems, the resentments, and the fears, and that entails bad conduct. We shouldn't be focused on them at all. And in fact, we should avoid focusing on them, and if they do come up as a point of discussion, it should be not with finger pointing or blame. It should be in a very safe and open atmosphere for people to discuss their feelings, where they are, what they've experienced, and it should be discussed in the manner of how to move forward in a much positive manner. Much more positive manner. So with that, the idea here is that the individual who is recovering should live their life based on the spiritual principles that we're talking about. They're following the steps. They're living their life day to day with the idea of being a good Samaritan, as we've already discussed. And over time, again, we're talking months, if not longer in some cases, the family should start to soften and to realize that this person is on a path of recovery that is long term, not something that's just a flash in the pan. And so with that, they will start to come around and begin to open up and perhaps even work on their own faults, but nonetheless be accepting and of the recovering alcoholic. And it's kind of as an example of a stray dog that you're looks like that they're really hungry, but they're very afraid. You reach out to them and they kind of back away or run away. Over time, if you are patient with that dog, perhaps they begin to warm to you, and you can give them some food and maybe a pet or two, something like that. So the idea is kind of a similar one in that you don't want to push, you don't want to try too hard to force people into some type of an agreement or acceptance. They have to come to it on their own. And again, that'll take time. Bill?
Yeah, this book is telling me I'm supposed to put these principles into action at home. If I just use these principles an hour a day in a meeting, what good is that? I have to use them all day long, the rest of the day. Because if I go home and I'm not using these principles at home, I'm going to fall back into my alcoholism real easy. And it said on the bottom of page 98, argument and fault finding are to be avoided like the plague. Sometimes we just have to walk away. We have to turn the other cheek and walk away. My sponsor years ago told me, when things start getting, out of control, go in the bathroom. Say, I'll be right back. I got to go to the bathroom. Go in the bathroom, shut the door, lock the door, and stay in there for a few minutes. Let everything cool down. In other words, pause before you do something. And that's a real good way to pull that pause off. Just take off and go into the bathroom, shut the door, lock yourself in there, stay there for 5 or 10 minutes. And then by the time you come back out, everything should have calmed down a little bit. And then that's basically what this is trying to tell us here is we're supposed to avoid it, because when we get into arguments, we're with other people, that's a resentment starting to happen. All right, the first new paragraph on page 99. After they have seen tangible results, the family will perhaps want to go along. These things will come to pass naturally and in good time, provided, however, the alcoholic continues to demonstrate that he can be sober, considerate, and helpful, regardless of what anyone says or does. Of course, we all fall below this standard many times, but we must strive to repair the damage immediately, lest we pay the penalty by a spree.
Yeah, and we're talking a little bit here when you talk about must try to repair the damage immediately as a step 10. Obviously, if you've made a mistake, you own up to it, you face it, and you do what you can to correct it and move on. But there's also another important thing here is that the alcoholic continues to demonstrate that he can be sober, considerate, and helpful, regardless of what anyone says or does. Now, that's a pretty tall order when you think in terms of people being very critical of you and bringing up the past and using it as a weapon or a bludgeoning you with it. So you've basically, like Bill said, pause in some manner or fashion, whether you go to the bathroom or take a minute or two or even just a few seconds can make the difference in the right or wrong response in regards to somebody's challenge in some manner or fashion here. But what we're talking about here is that we're down the path a ways. You've demonstrated that you've been good, and time has kind of gone by. You've demonstrated that you're going to stay sober, that you are on a solid path of recovery, and people are going to challenge that. It's just human nature. They want to believe it, but then again, they don't. And this is an example of having tangible results, but the family basically still isn't quite sure of where you are and may actually take you to task on it. And certainly you have to remember that you don't remember, and that some of the things that you may have done or said in the past has been very hurtful, and though that pain is still very real to the family member. Bill?
Yeah, basically, it says the family may perhaps want to go along. That's when they see us getting better, when they see results. So we're supposed to be a power of example, so we can not only help ourselves, but we're helping our family get better. All right, the next paragraph on page 99. If there be divorce or separation, there should be no undue haste for the couple to get together. The man should be sure of his recovery. The wife should fully understand his new way of life. If their old relationship is to be resumed, it must be on a better basis, since the former did not work. This means a new attitude and spirit all around. Sometimes it is to the best interest of all concerned that the couple remain apart. Obviously, no rule can be laid down. Let the alcoholic continue his program day by day. When the time for living together has come, it will be apparent to both parties.
Or on the other hand, if it is not to be, it will also become apparent. But no matter what, let the alcoholic continue his program day by day, and let things happen in its natural course. I'm sure that there's going to be some impatience, and that is dependent upon the situation. All of them are going to be different. In a lot of cases, it does take a little bit of time. Let's say, 2 months, 6 months, something like that of separation, and regular check-ins on a positive basis, that you are in fact recovering, that you are in fact doing the right thing, that maybe it is that you've got a job now and you're holding it down, you're providing some income, and that income is helping the family, and you're starting to make reparations and amends, and that is all to the positive. And perhaps those things are going to help bring two people back together to a table and be able to get past the differences. And when I say get past them, work through the differences in a positive manner, and potentially be able to come back together as a family or a couple and move forward. But there may be a point where, like it says, is that it's better off that they stay apart. There may be that there's too much damage that has occurred, or it may just be that there needs to be more time. 2 months or 6 months may just not be near enough time to heal some of the wounds that have been caused by the individual's alcoholic life. Bill?
This says, let the alcoholic continue his program day by day. That's about as close as this book gets to saying one day at a time. It doesn't use the expression one day at a time, but it says day by day. And day by day, we're supposed to continue our program. That's what it's telling me here. All right, the bottom of page 99. Let no alcoholic say he cannot recover unless he has his family back. This just isn't so. In some cases, the wife will never come back for one reason or another. Remind the prospect that his recovery is not dependent upon people. It is dependent upon his relationship with God. We have seen men get well whose families have not returned at all. We have seen others slip when the family came back too soon.
So this is just a reinforcement. Idea here is that you don't need a job in order to recover. You don't need money to recover. You don't need the family in this respect to recover. You need your higher power. You need a relationship with that higher power, and that's the important point here. If somebody is clamoring to have their family back and saying that there's just no way that they can recover without them, that's just not true. And there are plenty of cases where people have recovered by focusing on their higher power, by focusing on the spiritual principles, living day by day, as it says in the book, and working through that. It may or may not happen. We just don't, it's situation dependent, and it's also the strength of people and their resolve to want, really is more than anything else, to be back together and or not. So, Bill?
Yeah, this is the third time that this book right here in these few pages says that our recovery is dependent upon God. The book said it on page 98 twice, and it's saying it again here. Those driving that point home, our recovery is dependent upon God. It's not dependent upon other people, whether they're back with us or not. Okay, the first new paragraph on page 100. Both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual recovery. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances.
Okay, and that's just an emphatic statement of living day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen, and that is just a testament to finding your higher power, creating a strong relationship, an ever maturing relationship with your higher power, making it habitual so that it's rote, and you're obviously living it without thinking about it. And you find that doing so, you're going to have a better life, and it's going to be better than anything you could have planned. So just a good reinforcement here. I've highlighted most of this paragraph just because there's some really good statements in here. Live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances. If you've got a strong relationship with your higher power, it almost doesn't matter what is going on around you. You are in fact in a very stable and very strong place to be, and that is something that you didn't have when you were up to your neck in alcohol. Bill?
Yeah, this first sentence in this paragraph, both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. In other words, what this book is telling me, when I try to help somebody, a new person, they are not only walking the path of spiritual progress, so am I. I make spiritual progress by helping somebody else make spiritual progress. That's important stuff. That's how this program works. When we try to give it away, that's what makes us keep it. All right, the next paragraph, I'll read the two paragraphs because they kind of go together. When working with a man and his family, you should take care not to participate in their quarrels. You may spoil your chance of being helpful if you do. But urge upon a man's family that he has been a very sick person and should be treated accordingly. You should warn against arousing resentment or jealousy. You should point out that his defects of character are not going to disappear overnight. Show them that he has entered upon a period of growth. Ask them to remember, when they are impatient, the blessed fact of his sobriety. If you have been successful in solving your own domestic problems, tell the newcomer's family how that was accomplished. In this way, you can set them on the right track without becoming critical of them. The story of how you and your wife settled your difficulties is worth any amount of criticism.
Yeah, and again, here's a point in time where we're asking you to tell your story of this, and how you overcame adversity. It's just good. It's just good for the soul to be able to talk about it. You're not entering into the quarrels or the argument and or the back and forth with regard to a family. You're just offering up some positive solution that they might draw some inspiration from, and actually apply some of that goodwill towards their own recovery. Obviously not to get involved in their quarrels. You'll find yourself at the receiving end of them turning on you, and that's never positive at all. You may end up trying to choose sides, and then that's going to be a problem. I mean, any way you look at it, getting involved in the arguments of a family is just fraught with disaster. The idea here, though, is to reinforce, if you have access and or an audience with the family, to reinforce that the alcoholic is a sick person, that they are on a road of recovery. That recovery is going to take some time, that these are the principles that they're living by, and therefore, if they're recognizing those things, they should at least, well, I guess the idea would be is at least get out of the way and allow the person that's recovering to recover, and try their best to be patient Obviously, they're at the very end of that paragraph, ask them to remember when they are impatient, the blessed fact of his sobriety. That they have to remember that he's sober, she is sober, and on a road to recovery, and patience is obviously something that they should have. You're not going to erase any resentments. The other thing I think that is true, and I found in my own situation is that I think there was a bit of jealousy, that obviously now that I have been able to overcome my alcoholism and recover and stay sober now for years, I've been able to overcome something that was very, very difficult. I had created an atmosphere that was being dealt with almost on a daily basis, and now all of that is gone. And I think that there is some level of I think control. I think that there was a feeling of not having control anymore of the alcoholic, in a sense, kind of going down a path that's a little bit different than what is the message in this paragraph. But the idea here is that as the family is looking at this, it's really not a loss of control of the individual. It's gaining a foothold and a foundation that I think, which is a positive level of control, not of the individual, but of the situation. And if they can recognize that, then they're all the better. Bill?
Yeah, basically what this is telling us is stay out of other people's arguments. If they're arguing with each other, don't get involved in it. Don't participate in it, because that's a no-win situation. Whichever side you take or however you try to get involved in it, one of them is going to turn on you. It does say, though, that we can tell the newcomer's family how we solved our own domestic problems. Then you're taking the focus off of them and putting it on yourself. That's fine. But don't participate in their argument, because it's just not going to turn out good. All right, the bottom of page 100, the last paragraph. Assuming we are spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. People have said we must not go where liquor is served. We must not have it in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures which show drinking scenes. We must not go into bars. Our friends must hide their bottles if we go to their houses. We mustn't think or be reminded about alcohol at all. Our experience shows that this is not necessarily so.
Yeah, absolutely. The strength of your recovery is obviously at the point that they're trying to make here, assuming we are spiritually fit. Okay, so there's a qualifier there. You should be able to do all sorts of things that alcoholics should not do, and that is that you can be around alcohol without any problems or issues, and people should recognize that the strength of your recovery allows you to do that. And if it's real, then the triggers out there are just not going to be there. Remember, we're going to recoil from it like from a hot flame. And there's a statement I've got here. Not sure if Bill is the one that said this, but 12 steps takes the bullets out of the gun. The idea here is that if you're living the 12 steps, you're living by the spiritual principles, you're spiritually fit, and you have a strength in your recovery, then you can live your life as free as any person out there, alcoholic or non-alcoholic alike. So you shouldn't be afraid of that, and others should recognize that, and they should be comfortable enough comfortable as well. And sometimes that takes a discussion or a statement or some type of acknowledgement, but other times it doesn't. Just if you see that people are feeling a bit awkward around you and they're not quite sure of how they're supposed to act, you might put them at ease and just tell them that you're doing just fine, and to please, have a glass of wine and don't worry about me. I'll have my iced tea and be just fine. Bill?
Yeah, like Leo said, these are things that people might refer to as triggers. And as long as we're spiritually fit, these triggers should not affect us. The problem with the trigger is you're trying to change something outside of you to fix what's wrong inside of you. What you have to do is you have to unload the gun. Then the trigger is useless. It doesn't do anything. And the way we do that is by going through the 12 steps. All right, the first new paragraph on page 101. We meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind. There is something the matter with his spiritual status. His only chance for sobriety would be someplace like a Greenland ice cap, and even there an Eskimo might turn up with a bottle of scotch and ruin anything. Ask any woman who has sent her husband to distant places on the theory he would escape the alcohol problem.
Yeah, it's just basically saying, hey, again, an alcoholic who cannot meet them still has an alcoholic mind. There's something there that they've missed. There's something they haven't done. There's something that they need to do more of. And in that case, it is something that they should be aware of and they should be careful of. Obviously, being sent to the Greenland ice cap isn't necessarily going to fix things, but bottom line is that the absence of alcohol, obviously you can't drink if there is no alcohol, and that's one qualifier. But the point being is that true recovery means that there can be the presence of alcohol and that you can be just fine. If you're not, and you're still susceptible susceptible. I think we all are susceptible no matter what. But if you're at that point of temptation and you're really thinking about it and your mind is racing, trying to figure out how to do it without getting caught, et cetera, you need to stop and think that something is missing and you need to go back and really work on some of the foundation of your recovery through the steps and the spiritual principles. Bill?
Yeah, I think this paragraph is saying, don't try to hide from alcohol and go away somewhere, because alcohol is going to show up one way or another. We have to get spiritually fit to deal with it. We can't just try to hide from it. All right, the next paragraph, I think the two of them go together, so I'll read two paragraphs. In our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield a man from temptation is doomed to failure. If the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. We have tried these methods. These attempts to do the impossible have always failed. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there is drinking if we have a legitimate reason for being there. That includes bars, nightclubs, dances, receptions, weddings, even plain ordinary whoopee parties. To a person who has had experience with an alcoholic, this may seem like tempting providence, but it isn't.
Right. So I, again, just reinforcing the fact that the alcoholic tries to shield himself. He may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. Again, we're talking about somebody that is, quote, a dry drunk, if you will. They're white knuckling it. We're back to that, and we're obviously not with a person that has really embraced their higher power, created that strong relationship with their higher power, and been able to instill these spiritual principles and act upon them on a daily basis. So there is, if all you're doing is saying, there's no alcohol available, and that's your recovery, that's a very weak foundation to be working on. And if you have, if you are strong and you have a legitimate reason for being in certain places, then you should be okay. And that is really what you need to ask yourself before you walk into a bar. Why am I walking into this bar, and is it necessary or not? And maybe it is a get together from work, and they're all meeting at a place. The boss is going to make some announcements, and you need to be there and present. Obviously, you have a legitimate reason to be there, and therefore, again, with the strength of your recovery, you should be fine. If not, then you've really got to question that. And remember this: it's higher power first, your job, your family, house, income, etc. second. That's another point here. Bill?
Yeah, like Leo said, the example of if you have to go to a bar because there's some kind of a work meeting, you've got a legitimate reason for being there, that's fine. Don't take this out of context. Don't think you can just go hang out in a bar just to prove you can. That's not a good idea for us. It's better that we stay away from that. But if you have a reason to be there, it's okay to go there. All right, the last paragraph on page 101. You will note that we have made an important qualification. Therefore, ask yourself on each occasion, have I any good social, business, or personal reason for going to this place? Or am I expecting to steal a little vicarious pleasure from the atmosphere of such places? If you answer these questions satisfactorily, you need have no apprehension. Go or stay away, whichever seems best. But be sure you are on solid spiritual ground before you start, and that your motive in going is thoroughly good. Do not think of what you can get out of the occasion. Think of what you can bring to it. But if you are shaky, you had better work with another alcoholic instead.
Yes. So not much to say there. I think it's very well said, as with all of the book is being very well said. The idea here is that just like we had already talked about, if there's a legitimate reason for being there, then you should be fine, but don't go just to go and put yourself into a situation where you're going to be tempted. If you are on shaky ground, the reference back to working with another person will shore things up and help solidify your recovery. Get on the phone, go to a meeting, do something where you're actually in a position to talk with other alcoholics and do that instead. Bill?
Yeah, the last sentence says, but if you're shaky, you had better work with another alcoholic instead. Again, if you're on shaky ground and you're not sure of yourself, this book says constantly try to work with another alcoholic. That's what helps us get better. It doesn't say double up on your meetings. It doesn't say call your sponsor. It doesn't say pick up the coffee cups. That's all good stuff to do. But when you're on shaky ground, this book says work with another alcoholic. That's what will keep you sober more than anything else. All right, the first new paragraph on page 102. Why sit with a long face in places where there is drinking, sighing about the good old days? If it is a happy occasion, try to increase the pleasure of those there. If a business occasion, go and attend to your business enthusiastically. If you're with a person who wants to eat in a bar, by all means go along. Let your friends know they are not to change their habits on your account. At a proper time and place, explain to all your friends why alcohol disagrees with you. If you do this thoroughly, few people will ask you to drink. While you were drinking, you were withdrawing from life little by little. Now you are getting back into the social life of this world. Don't start to withdraw again just because your friends drink liquor.
Yeah, good point here with regard to the fact that you should go along if there is a good reason to. They're also making reference here to being comfortable enough to explain why alcohol disagrees with you. I did start out talk about the fact that I might have been on a medication or alcohol has I ended up making jokes out of it more than anything. Alcohol disagrees with me and causes me to end up in handcuffs or something like that. Not that I've been arrested, I'm not, but I would make a reference to that because I would want people to look at it humorously, kind of lightheartedly, instead of basically saying I'm an alcoholic and I'm gonna ruin your night if I start drinking, kind of thing. That's not really the approach that we're talking about here. what we're basically saying is that at the right moment, and we emphasize at the right moment, explain to others why you're not drinking, because it might come up even in just passing. Hey, Leo, why aren't you having a drink? It's okay if especially being spiritually fit and having the strength in your recovery to just basically say, I just don't drink. I mean, that's, you don't have to explain a lot of things. You could just say, hey, I just don't drink. And there's a lot of people out there that don't drink, even that are not alcoholics, that don't drink. So the idea is that if they are good friends, if they are good colleagues, peers, etc., they'll accept it and move on. I think that one of the things that I was concerned with is that there was going to be people that were going to pressure me into the point of saying, oh, come on, Leo, you can have one drink. Come on, one drink's not going to hurt, et cetera, et cetera. It just didn't happen. I built that up in my mind, and it just wasn't there. So there was a point in time where I was very comfortable in my sobriety and recovery. And then to this day now, I have no problems telling people that I don't drink. I leave it at that. If there's any kind of, raised eyebrow or question or anything like that, I really, truly don't have a problem telling them that I'm an alcoholic, and it just isn't, I just can't drink. The too many things in the past that were negative and not positive, and I've chosen to be away from all of that. And that is all that's ever had to be said. And to the point that a lot of people will actually congratulate or provide some level of positive reinforcement of that. Bill?
Yeah, when it says explain to your friends, today most people, they understand when someone's in recovery. It's not like it was years ago. 50 years ago, if you didn't drink, people thought you were a weirdo. Today, people accepted it, and it's better, and it's easier to explain. All right, the next paragraph on page 102, I'll read 2 paragraphs now. Your job is now to be at a place where you may be of maximum helpfulness to others. So never hesitate to go anywhere if you can help. You should not hesitate to visit the most sordid spot on earth on such an errand. Keep on the firing line of life, and these motives in God will keep you unharmed. Many of us keep liquor in our homes. We often need it to carry green recruits through severe hangovers. Some of us still serve it to our friends, provided they are not alcoholic. But some of us think we should not serve liquor to anyone. We never argue this question. We feel that each family, in light of their own circumstances, ought to decide for themselves.
Sure. It's kind of like, this is maybe a little bit strong, but it's my house, my rules. If you feel like you can have alcohol in the house and serve it to non-alcoholics and want to make that available, then certainly do so. If you feel like that you have changed the way that you have lived your life and decided that there will be no alcohol in the house, there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. People shouldn't give you a hard time about not having it available. I certainly haven't had that situation in my home, although there is alcohol in the house, very limited, but there is alcohol in the house. Although, even though my wife still drinks, she hasn't drank. Gosh, I think it's been a couple of years since she's had a drink. It's amazing that she's able to do that without any hesitation. I digress. Your job now is to be at a place where you may be of maximum helpfulness to others. So never hesitate to go anywhere if you can be helpful. And that is this talk about being in sordid places, is that you're out there trying to help somebody. You're out there looking for somebody that's struggling mightily and needs some assistance. That's the idea here. We're not talking about you just visiting a sordid place just to prove to yourself that you can do that without falling prey to alcohol or substance abuse. That and again, it's case by case dependent, and each family can make those decisions for themselves. Bill?
Okay, we're on the top of page 103. I'll finish this page because it's only a half a page. We are careful never to show intolerance or hatred of drinking as an institution. Experience shows that such an attitude is not helpful to anyone. Every new alcoholic looks for this spirit among us and is immensely relieved when he finds we are not witch burners. A spirit of intolerance might repel alcoholics whose lives could have been saved had it not been for such stupidity. We would not even do the cause of temperate drinking any good, for not one drinker in 1,000 likes to be told anything about alcohol by one who hates it. Someday we hope that Alcoholics Anonymous will help the public to a better realization of the gravity of the alcoholic problem. But we shall be of little use if our attitude is one of bitterness or hostility. Drinkers will not stand for it. After all, our problems were of our own making. Bottles were only a symbol. Besides, we have stopped fighting anybody or anything. We have to.
Absolutely. And we're kind of finishing up here this working with others. The idea at the end here is that you don't want to be necessarily a crusader, somebody that's out there, you know, beating a table saying that alcohol is bad for you. You shouldn't be drinking. I stopped drinking, so therefore you shouldn't drink. If you're drinking, you're wrong, et cetera, et cetera. That is just the biggest turnoff. It's repulsive, and people will recoil from that. Then bottom line is that doing so, you also may lose the idea or the potential of helping somebody because you're being so strong. And it's kind of that on opposite ends of the spectrum. If you're being extreme in one way or another, you certainly are absolutely turning somebody off. Someday, we hope that Alcoholics Anonymous will help the public to a better realization of the gravity of the alcoholic problem. I think over the decades now that Alcoholics Anonymous has been around, that has become true. I can't tell you how many TV programs or movies I watch, and one of the characters is a recovering alcoholic, or maybe the entire show is centered around recovering as an alcoholic, etc. And they run the gamut from serious dramas to comedies, and it is mainstream now, I believe, in that most people, like Bill said, are aware of alcoholism, and that is something that I think has happened because, and I believe this is because of Alcoholics Anonymous and the acceptance of people actually recovering from alcohol. And in fact, even people choosing not to drink because of being around alcoholics is also true. Bill?
Yeah, if newcomers think that we hate alcohol, that could repel them and that could drive them out of AA. We're not alcohol haters. We're just people who can't drink because we get a different reaction to alcohol than other people get. And it says right at the bottom, besides, we have stopped fighting anybody or anything. And that includes your home group business meeting. That's all I got. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate you taking the time today to do the reading. Rob was not able to be here today, but I do want to say thank you. And Bill does have a class of his own that he does on Fridays. I'll try to get that in the chat before we shut things down. All right, let's close out with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.